See, I've done a lot of work with and through Contact Theatre in the past. I'm a trustee at Contact, so effectively my board member, so I attend board meetings and stuff like that. And I'm also involved in the Young Identity Project, which is a key partner company of Contact. And Young Identity is a spoken word project for young people in Manchester. And basically, Steve Vickers, the project manager, approached me a while ago and said, I guess you know about the agency. I'd heard about it through some of the past people who'd helped to set it up. And Steve basically said, we're recruiting for new staff. Do you fancy being the peer mentor? So I said, sounds great. Tell me a little bit more. Let's sit and have a coffee and talk about the project. So we did. Sounded like a brilliant project. So I said, yeah, I'm up for it. Let's do it. So that's how I got to be involved in the agency. I haven't worked in Moston before, but funnily enough, my nana used to live not too far from here. She used to live in North Manchester, she lived in Harper Hay actually, and she also lived in Blakely. And my experience of Harper Hay, Blakely, Moston, it's never been positive, if I'm being honest, or previously had never been positive. It's an area that I'd associated with racism and with massive deprivation. I guess you've got the Bird and Manning Club on Rochdale Road, which was for me and for many members of the black community a big point of racism, and that kind of reinforced that. So for me, coming into the project, I was like, Moston, Harper Hay, what's it going to be like? But then having worked here for the past 6 months, or going on 6 months now, it's totally changed my opinion of the area. It really has. In our consultation, the young people went out back in October and they actually spoke to members of the community. We went with them to support them and see how they were getting on. And just to see how the community responded to them and interacted with them, it really helped to, I guess, change the perception that I had of the area, because they were very open with them, they were very friendly, they were very supportive. As practitioners, Kate and I have got our own ways of working, and to be presented with a methodology which is so strict, we're like, what if it doesn't work? So many hang-ups that we had to begin with. But then by the end of the first session, we knew this is a great methodology, because the young people really responded well to it. They got something from it, they engaged with it, and they had fun. So I've never worked on a project like this before. Very much theatre practices, but how do you apply that to the wider community, and how do you apply that to projects which aren't necessarily centred around the arts or aren't based on theatre? You know, none of the projects are particularly theatre based at all. You know, Crumbs is a baking project, Artist Avenue is a visual arts project, and by Sydney Rose Sewing Academy is fashion. So none of them by nature are intrinsically theatre based, but the methodology is theatre based and actually got them to a point where that their projects are robust and they're strong and they're resilient. Applying a theatre model to something so diverse, it's really interesting, because it's not something that I'd thought of. You know, of course, you know, theatre in general and theatre practice can inform life skills, you know, confidence and presenting an idea and the process of developing something. But to actually apply that to a project like the agency, where it's all about benefiting your community and empowering young people to be leaders in their community, is something that I'd never considered really. Many young people, because of their experience in formalised education, informal education, they're not going to engage well with theatre. I didn't particularly enjoy theatre in school. I enjoyed drama, but I didn't enjoy theatre. The theatre that we were exposed to was stuff like Shakespeare, which I'm now with time and experience come to appreciate. But it was theatre that I couldn't relate to, and I think that that's the experience for many young people. So the idea of inviting a young person into a theatre, the word theatre already, it can seem exclusive. You know, theatre's not for people like me. Theatre is for somebody else. It isn't for me. So to say to somebody, yeah, come and experience the richness of theatre and get involved and be creative, already they've got hang-ups and they've got preconceptions of that whole industry. So do we just say, because they're not going to engage in theatre in the way that we'd like them to, do we just give up and say, okay, in that case, theatre isn't for them? I don't think we do that. I think that theatre is for everybody, and that's where projects like the agency come into it, because if people aren't going to come to the theatre, then surely we need to take the theatre to them. And the richness of theatre, whether that's as an audience member, whether that's theatre practices, so the methodology of the agency, or whether that's theatre makers, how do theatre makers respond to the challenges that they see in their communities? And I think these are really, really important things for young people to engage with. Really important. What I'm learning recently and I'm becoming very passionate about is attaching value to creative work, because we live in a society where people will tell you, oh, can you come and do a performance as an opportunity, but there's no money in it for you. And it's like, well, this is my profession, this is my craft, this is my thing, this is how I make my living. And for projects like the agency to say, yeah, we're going to actually pay you to be here because we recognise that your time is important and that your creative output and your outcomes are really important. I think that for me has been the most different experience that I've had, the experience that's the most different from anything that I've experienced before. It's inevitable, like you say, that only 3 ideas can actually be funded. So how do those other people who weren't successful compute that? How do they respond to that? How do they manage this idea of failure? And a big part of it is the process. Now, the first cycle and even the second cycle, the agency is not about us doing their job. It's not about us making your idea happen. Otherwise, the Guild Bank, whoever, whatever funder, Big Lottery could give us the funding and say, yeah, you guys go ahead and make this happen. It's about the young people being empowered to actually make the change themselves. And failure is a really, really important aspect of our journey in putting together anything. We're going to experience failure. And that's something that we set them up from the very first session. There was a game that we played with them which is called Smooth Pass, and the idea is we give them 4 tennis balls and you had to pass them through each of their hands in as short a space as possible. And we left them with that for over an hour. Me, myself and Kate, we just sat back and watched them do it and watched them talk to each other and find ways to do it. And it would have been easy for us to say after 10 minutes, right, you're not getting this, here's how you do it. And we refused to do that. And as a result, they actually came up with a better solution than what Kate and I thought was the quickest way to actually do it. So the idea of failure and I guess persevering towards a goal is something that we set in stone from the very first session. And then in terms of building them towards that, we talked about the concept of failure, because failure isn't not being given funding. If that's what it is, I've failed many times. I couldn't tell you how many funding applications that I've written that have been rejected, or how many times I've personally pitched for something or applied for a position and not got the position. Several times that's happened, but that's not failure, because each time you learn something about yourself and you learn something about the process that you need to go through to be successful. But nonetheless, it was hard to let those young people who weren't successful know. A lot of these young people came lacking confidence, and they almost felt as if it was this or nothing. It was the funding or nothing, and we had to really encourage them and reinforce the idea that what isn't successful now might not. It could be that the idea isn't strong enough, and that's unfortunate and that's a shame. But it could be that the time isn't right. It could be that there's something already like this in the area. It could be that Crumbs or the Artist Avenue or the By Sydney Road Sewing Academy was simply a better idea. These are valid reasons as to why they weren't given the funding. But to say and to reinforce that actually the fact that you weren't funded doesn't say anything. Doesn't say much about you. It talks about your idea and your project. But the fact that you've actually reached this stage means that you are successful. Many people give up or would give up before this stage. So that's, I guess, yeah, it was difficult. There were tears. There were a lot of young people who were really disappointed. But I guess as an exit strategy as well, letting them know, still engage with us. We're still here as individuals. In our own time, we're happy to help you out and
have they engaged with you?
They have, yes. I know that some of the agents, well, most of the agents are still in regular contact with Steve. They've popped into contact to come and see Steve. They've been to shows before. Steve brokered a relationship between one of the young agents and the Manchester Business School, because although she wasn't successful, Dale Sidhu, who's the head of the business school, saw something in her, and he was really blown away by her presentation and the depth of knowledge that she showed. And he actually invited her to come and have a meeting with him about some research that she could be commissioned to deliver on the behalf of the business school. So yeah, that engagement is ongoing, and they're still engaged in that way, and they still see themselves as agents, and they've still benefited from the process. The Young Identity Project is really successful, and I'd like to think that I've been a small part of that. And so the way that I deliver in Young Identity has become almost a way that I deliver in every other project. So to be given a new methodology and a new way of working with, and actually seeing that can also produce really successful results and real achievements, shows me that as a facilitator I should be finding ways to diversify the way that I work, and also looking at what is it within my practice that makes what I do successful, or what is it within my practice that makes what I do unsuccessful. Because again, in our practice as facilitators and as professionals, we celebrate our achievements, but there's also going to be challenges. There's also going to be things that didn't work well, and I think it's really important. We throw out the phrase best practice. I hear it in business and in management, but what is best practice? Best practice is simply finding the different stages and different elements that make a successful project and make what we do excellent. And I think that methodologies like the agency and projects like the agency have really challenged me to find out and to get to the heart of what it is that I do as a practitioner, and find out how I can engineer the work I do in such a way that I produce more consistent results. It's a great place. There's always something happening here, and it's a real hub of the community. It's all about people. It's a people place, I love being here. Yeah.
Would you be tempted to bring other elements of the things you do and potentially do them here?
Absolutely.
And would you have done that before?
I wouldn't have. No. In terms of Moston, in terms of working in Moston, you'd have to commission me, or you'd have to employ me to do as the agency have. You'd have to employ me to do a particular piece of work. I wouldn't particularly have said, yeah, I'm going to go and work in Moston. That wouldn't have been a consideration, if I'm being honest. So this has been an eye opener, and actually, I guess my preconceptions of other areas that I've had limited or negative experience with has changed me in such a way that I'm not going to be so close-minded, and I'm going to actually be willing to step out and move out of my comfort zone, because there's beautiful people everywhere. I think that for the agency to continue to grow, I'd say that the facilitators, maybe for 2 years, you should work on it for 2 years, and then they should get new people in, because what was great for us, for myself and Kate, and for the young people, was that it was new to all of us. It didn't seem like we were going through a tick box exercise, or that we were going through the motions, or this is something that I'm used to doing and I know how to do it. It was something that we were learning as we were going along together.
That's an important part of the methodology for you.
It is a really important part for me. The fact that myself and Kate had just been trained on it, and we hadn't experienced it in any great detail or any great capacity, to then be entrusted with delivering this methodology. It was new to us, and I think that enabled us to build a rapport, because the young people, the young agents themselves knew you guys are new to the process as well. So, maybe the sense of discomfort, or there were times when they weren't sure of a particular thing. We could relate to that. We could say, well, actually, guys, 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago, this was new to us as well, but we trust it. We trust the process, without doubt, and we know that you'll come through. So the sense of apprehension you're feeling, we've been there, we've experienced it too. So we're in it together. So let's push through it. Investing in the creative industries is really, really important, because we educate young people to pass tests and to retain information, and then we ask them to go out in the world and be creative and find solutions to problems. And I think that projects like the agency invest in the creative industries, because in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 2 years' time, some of these very agents will be at the forefront of their industries. I really genuinely believe that. So I think that it's really important that we invest and we see the value in the creative industries in a way that actually it contributes to GDP, and it contributes to the mood of society. And I think it was Nelson Mandela who says, if you want to get a gauge of where society's at, look at the way that it treats its most vulnerable people, and our most vulnerable people are our young people. So yeah, let's invest in the youth, and let's give them something to run with for the future.